Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by City Current, powered by Lipscomb & Pitts Insurance and Higginbotham. We are honored to have with us Dwania Kyles. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We've had Dwania on our radio show talking about the historical significance of the story of the Memphis 13. She's a Memphis 13 alum. She's a co-founder of the Memphis 13 Foundation. There's a documentary. There's so much to unpack on this ChangeMakers podcast, but we're just honored to have with us Dwania Kyles. Dwania, how are you doing?
I am great. I love your energy. I love being in the same space that you are and all that you're doing out here in the community to elevate people's minds and their lives, Jeremy. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for having me.
Well, we talked about, before we hit record on this, the importance of this in terms of the historical significance for Memphis, the Mid-South, for our nation and for our world with the story of the Memphis 13, which we'll talk about. But also there is an important relevance for these conversations in the present and the future. And so that's why I'm so excited to dive in to not only the story, but all these lessons, these very important life lessons that you've learned along the way so that we can really unpack it and share it with this global audience. So let's start. Obviously, you grew up in Memphis, but give us a little bit of your childhood. Give us some of the things when you talk about being a youth, even before the Memphis 13, give us a little bit of just what your childhood was like.
First of all, my childhood was so wonderful. I often tell my daughter, I was like, I'm sorry I didn't give you the same childhood that I had. And it really goes back to my parents. Both of my parents were born in the South, but their families migrated to Chicago because that was during the migration where Black people wanted a better life. So it's like, get out of the South, and go and move to the promised land. Chicago and the North for Black people literally was called the promised land. Okay. So, and I remember it wasn't until my father's memorial service that I was looking up information. Because, you don't Google your parents. They're your parents. Who Googles their parents? So I Googled my father to find out some information so I could work on what I wanted to say in his, and whatever, I can't even think of what you call it right now, obituary. And I came across this interview that he did. And he says point blank that his father, because at the time, I think my father had like about four brothers, it was about 4 or 5 of them. And they were living in Mississippi, and his father was a minister. And he said, my father, there was a young boy that had been hung, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. My grandfather said, I got to get my boys out of here. So that's why they moved to Chicago. And my mother's father was living in Macon, Georgia, but he was from Chicago, and his mother lived in Chicago. And I think once my grandmother had the second baby, he moved them to Chicago to be with his mom and everything, who was a Garveyite. Okay, so she was conscious and aware, and my parents met in high school. But I say all that to say that my father followed in his father's footsteps, who had passed by this time and became a minister. And I met my mom, and they met in high school, because I always tell people it's a love story, and they met in high school, and then, got married, had 3 children, and all in their 20s. But when my father was in seminary school, he became aware of all that Martin Luther King was doing with the SCLC and said to my mom, we should be a part of the civil rights movement. Let's move to the South. Now, who does that? Because all the Black people were leaving the South, and they were like, okay. So, and that's what we have to remember about movements. They are made up of young people who are just out here saying, I'm not taking that anymore, or I want to be a part of the change and the shift. So my parents basically moved to Memphis like around, my sister was born in 1957, and I think by the time she was 2, we moved to Memphis. So she was 2, and we're stair steps. She was 2, I was 3, my brother was 4, and my parents were like 26. You see what I'm saying? Or 24, somewhere between 24 and 26. Moved to Memphis with 3 children under the age of 5 and didn't have a home to stay in. But the good thing was my father came to take over a church that had split. It had 50 members and they were having service in a funeral home because that's what you did, when you didn't have your own church. And, and then ended up doing what he did, getting the church and blah, blah, blah. But that's how we moved to, Memphis, from Chicago to Memphis, Tennessee. And we were a family on the front line. I often say if I ever wrote a book, it probably would be called Family on the Front Line, because it wasn't just my father. We were, as the story goes, we were all on that front line. If my father was in a march, we were in a march. My mother was in the march, we were in the march. So literally, and it's not easy necessarily for outsiders to come into a city and just get right in the heart of everything. But that's what they were able to do. They did that. They came. I had to be about 3. And by the time I was 5, we were doing the desegregation of the Memphis City Public Schools. We didn't even have a house the first year. We lived with one of the members. We didn't get the house until the second year we were here. So, yeah.
I love the fact, though, that you're so quick to point out your mom's important role, because in many cases, your father gets some of the limelight or the limelight for being on the balcony with Dr. King. And, you're always the first to say, no, wait a second, my mom played just as important as a role in this. And when you talk about the civil rights movement, like you said, we're a family on the front lines.
Right.
Share a little bit of that dynamic in terms of what you remember about your mom and father and their partnership together working through this, because that's got to be difficult when you look at heading a family, especially being so young, taking this on together. So what was their relationship like?
It was beautiful. It was a partnership. It really was, because there's somebody that's got to host everybody. Dad was on the balcony, but mom was the one that had the house was set, the food was ready, everything was in place. Okay. And it was so, I don't want to just talk about that one incident, but it didn't make a difference who it was. Angela Davis could be in town. Percy Sutton from New York could be in town. The bishops, the this, the that. There always had to be somebody. Well, what is this event? Because an event is an event. And so I would say that she probably put on more events than my father did, because not only was she involved and she too was involved in the day-to-day of working. I mean, Steve Cohen and my mother were very good friends way back in the day when he first decided that he wanted to run for city council or whatever position, because I didn't really know him until probably 2004 or something. And we were at an event together and he came up and he started telling me the history that he had with my mother, just in terms of her being out in the field working to help him secure the position that he was running for, always on the front line. My mother had the daycare center. We need a daycare center at the church. She was the one that started that. And so many of the children came through that daycare before they went into school. So that was on that end. I remember at my mom's funeral service, and Jesse Jackson was speaking at my mom's service, and he talked about the importance of her role, because what people don't understand is most of the time, a lot of the ideas that are being shaped and born and shaped happened at those kinds of events, that the women and the mothers and the wives are the ones that are orchestrating and creating that space where people feel safe enough to come in and say, this is how we're going to be moving forward. So she was at the front line of all of that. And while at the same time, I'm not going to say because my mother didn't struggle with she didn't struggle with the female position and what we should do in life. She would support it, when, women's rights and all that. She would support it. She didn't struggle with it. She was very clear about it, because there's no separating that from what it was that she was doing within the movement. And really, Jeremy, when we look at the movement, especially let's look at the civil rights movement, women made up the majority of the people that were out there actually, making it happen on the committees, And so, yeah, I'm very sensitive about people really understanding that my father was able to continue, because they did divorce, I think, when I was in college, but my father, but by that time he was who he was, but there's somebody that's creating that space, and that is saying you can do it, and so forth and so on. And not to mention, because, and I didn't know this until 2018, I just never understood why I didn't know it. But, 2018 was the 50th commemoration and 50th celebration of the I Am a Man movement and the commemoration of Martin King's assassination. Well, my brothers and sister and I were doing a radio show during that period, like around the 3rd of April, and we were doing it for WLOK. And my brother said, "Do you remember the day after Martin King was assassinated? My mother," he said, "our mother woke us up and said, we are never to talk about this again." And we were one of those families that discussed everything every other day. Family meeting, and I'd forgotten, but it was because my father had nightmares. And there are no manuals on this stuff, okay? There's no manual on how to navigate your way through the civil rights movement necessarily, So, and they were still pretty young. They were like in their 30s at the point, first of all, I can't imagine being 30 anything with 3 kids that are, teenagers and below. I got one child, and I was like, okay, I did my part. But, I just know we never talked about it. And that was strange, because we always talked about everything. And part of it was because I just don't think, she was trying to figure out, how do I maneuver this so that my husband is in less pain? Because from the time I was 12 until I went off to college when I was 17, my father, not as often, but my father would wake up screaming, in the middle of the night, and my room was next to their room. So the role that not only my mother, but women play in what goes on in determining how we move forward is extremely important and should be highlighted more. And I'm glad you took the time to ask me that question.
Yeah, and I'm glad you elaborated on that, because I agree. And I think these are the stories that need to be told that just don't get the spotlight they deserve. Did you realize that you were a part of a movement at that age? Like when did that sink in that, oh, wait a second, what we're doing is special? Like, we are a part of something larger. Like, did that ever sink in as a child, or did it get sink in later?
No. It did, but not when I was 5.
Sure.
Not when I was 5, probably 5, 6, 7. I would say for me, probably when I was like around 9 or 10. It really sunk in. But one of the reasons it really, really sunk in is because otherwise, oh my God, this is just so much fun. We're at meetings, and the Willises are there, and the Sugarmans are there, and the Smiths are there, and some of the ministers, and it was wonderful. They would always put us in a room, but you know how children are. You always gonna be sneaking out, and you're gonna be listening to what they're saying, and then you're gonna hear what they say, and then you're gonna come back to the group. And I mean, this is real life. And then you're gonna be talking about what they in there saying, because you're trying to be grown too. So this is like when we're 10, 11, 12 and stuff like that. But it really hit me when I was 10, because you know, my father had built, we said he was in his Jesus period. He built us some bedrooms upstairs in the attic, okay, of the house that we lived in South Memphis, 1155 Greenwood. So he built, you know, I'll never forget, Dwayne's room was green and me and Drashina's room was pink. And so he did it himself. So I was really very proud of him. And so, you know, it's like that A shape, you know, you're up in the attic. And so when you would go back in the closet area of Dwayne's room, so that if they ever wanted to fix the fan, because it was one of those houses that had that big fan up in the attic, and if he ever wanted to fix it, he wanted somebody to be able to get to it. So he left this big square opening, but you could go in there, and then there was a slatted window that you could look down into the front yard, right? So, you know, we're asleep. It's, I don't know, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and you hear, first you hear muffled voices, and then you hear fire engines, and then your kids, and we're like, what's going on? So we get up and we hear Dwayne say, come look, something like that. And we look down in the front yard, a cross is burning in our yard. So yeah, by the time I was 10, I was clear that this was a movement. I understood everything that we had been doing up to this point. And that's why I say we were a family on the front line. And I know that when I speak, sometimes I talk about before I could get over the trauma of the desegregation, because now, mind you, I don't even know I'm traumatized though, really. Before I can get over that, then the cross is burned in the yard by the time 5 years later, by the time I'm 10. Then by the time I'm 12, Martin Luther King is assassinated on his way to our house for dinner. I was beginning to check out. I would have checked out had they not started Operation Push. But once they started Operation Push, and Dr. King was assassinated in 68, by 71, Push had been born, Operation Push, People United to Save and Serve Humanity. That's what it was called in the beginning. And my father was over the Memphis chapter of that. And that was one of the things here again that they talked about in the backyard at something that my mother made sure everybody was comfortable, hostess with the mostest, you know. But and that's what we have to also remember. They weren't just the hostess with the mostest. They were definitely giving their input into how these things should be, created and what they should look like as well. And that was what Jesse Jackson was speaking to when he spoke at my mother's memorial. But anyway, the fact that I didn't know I was traumatized, and I said this before, speaks to my parents' ability to connect with us and check in with us enough so that we could be comfortable in what it was we were doing moving forward. Because, some of the Memphis 13, and rightfully so, and I spoke a little bit about this before, some of the Memphis 13 feel like, they just got left because nobody came back and checked on them. And that's when we know when more of us need to be involved, because once the schools were desegregated, then we had to move on to the buses, and then we had to move on to the movies, and then, and work our way to the courthouses and things like that. Well, when you only got a small group of people that are leading the way, and not enough people are assuming the positions to go and do their part too, or create their part. And that's what I'm feeling like in 2021. How many people have you talked to that says, when are we going to get back to normal? We're never going to be back to what was normal. And I don't know if I want to go back. No, I don't. I know I don't want to go back to what was normal. We have an opportunity. This has been more than a pivot. In the beginning, it might have been a pivot, but we're in a full-blown shift right now. And it's really, the paradigm shift isn't starting. We're all up in it right now. We're already, and it's more about what are we going to do to help create what the new normal is going to be like? Because that's what the civil rights movement and any movement is about.
Yeah, that's such great, powerful perspective. I want to go back though, because I'm just curious. so the cross burning in your yard, how did your parents help you process that?
They basically, they were like, this is the world that we're living in. This is why we do the work that we do. And, maybe if my father hadn't been a minister, he might have come a different way. But because, he was supported in the spiritual world and he had his footing there, we could look at that and, don't be afraid. These are what you expect. These are the results you expect from the climate that we're living in right now. Because by the time we were 10, we would have, when we would sit at dinner, and it was so interesting because it was like we would always try to wait for Daddy to get home unless he was doing a revival out of town or unless he was, away on civil rights work or something like out of the city. We would always try to sit down and eat as a family. And I never will forget, we would wait for him. And then my mother said, okay, waiting time is over. Let's sit down and eat. And that's when he would walk in the door. And that's when Daddy would walk in the door. But I would have to say that would be one of my favorite times. And at those times, we would go around the table and that's when they would check in and say, how did your day go? What went on with your day? And if there was something that was going on in the city, it would be like, what do you think about that? And if you didn't have something to think about that, they said, well, we're going to go around the table. And when we come back, we're going to come back to you because at that point, you should have a thought about it. And so them planting those kinds of seeds in us so that we could think beyond just what a headline was and understand that when people are writing, that's their perspective of it. And so I appreciate my family, my parents for, doing that, which is, and so when we're so busy focused in that light, we didn't have time to just to be afraid of everything because we were thinking, how can we make this better? What's wrong with this picture and how can we make this picture better? So, to talk about a cross burning in your yard. Well, this hasn't been the first cross that's been burned in a yard, there's nothing for you to be afraid of. This goes along with the work that we're doing. Yes, you should be careful. It probably just made us more kids-wise, it just made up, kids, who do they think they are, burn a cross in our yard, and some of the stuff we used to do was really pretty crazy sometimes, that my parents never knew, when we're flexing out here or anything. But them just saying it goes with the territory. That's what happened. That goes with the territory, and just making sure that we understood. And it was at that dinner table that we had some of our best conversations and were able to shape not just our minds, but our hearts. Because at the end of the day, when I look back, I said to you before that the Memphis 13 Foundation is a project of love, and we will be leading with our hearts. And anybody that doesn't want to be in that energy, then okay, because it's not for everybody. And when you're ready, we're going to be here, but we're going to be actively out here spreading the love to attract what it is that we want to attract. But and so if I had to say, where did I really get that from and where did I really experience that first? That was in my household. That was in my home. That was with my parents and my siblings.
And I think that's something that as society we've lost a little bit of, is the sit around the dinner table and exactly like you're saying, asking, what do you think about that? What's going on in your world? Why do you think like that? So really peeling back the onion, getting deeper, and especially for the children to understand, we become so busy where it's like, let's just, drive through real fast. That's our dinner. We unpack and we go to bed. And it's like, no, wait a second. We're missing an opportunity to, one, connect, but two, to process and better understand what's really going on so that you become more mature, more thoughtful, a stronger adult going through these moments, and you can build on that. So I think that dinner table talk is an important just conversation in general for all of us to be having for our families and our youth. Talk about the Memphis 13, because I think for those who, aren't familiar with the story, how do you tell the story in terms of just, starting to kind of add some context to what you're doing now with the foundation? So how do you tell the Memphis 13 story?
I tell the Memphis 13 story as a story of empowerment, of a story of, it doesn't make any difference what your age is. Here again, it's your actions. What are we doing? Why are we waiting for somebody else always to guide us, lead us, or any of that? We are all capable. I don't think there's going to be another Martin Luther King. There doesn't need to be another Martin Luther King. What needs to happen is we need to continue to build on the foundation that he's already laid for us. So it doesn't make any difference how old you are. Here again, can you imagine the courageousness and the love because that's what most of the parents whose kids ended up going, that was the parents' decision. That wasn't the kids' decision at 5 and 6 years old. Can you imagine putting your baby on the front line? My father came back in the film and says, and I encourage people to watch the film. It's the Memphis13.com. That's all you have to just put THE in front of it. But my father says in the film, later I felt guilty about it. But it had to be done. It had to be done. So once we deal with the guilt, okay, then how do we begin to heal it? And sometimes I wonder, do we just become so inundated with, the emotion of feeling the guilt or the hurt or the pain that we can't move past it? And if we can't, it just locks us in place. And it really just takes our lives from us. It just, takes life out of us because the energy isn't able to grow and we're not able to grow. And you use a very great word that I love, and we're not able to connect. If I can't connect to my own heart, Jeremy, how am I going to connect to yours? If I'm not able to heal what's in here and what my thoughts are, and the fact that, why am I hating this person? Even though that person could do something really heinous, what happened in that person's life that would make them do something that heinous? That's what my parents were teaching us when the cross was burned. What goes on in people's life? Because it all comes from pain. And that's what it does. It comes from pain. So yes, I use that story of the Memphis 13 to talk about how valued we are as human beings, how we can be empowered and empower others. And all we have to do is be focused and courageous. And the real courage isn't about whether or not I'm afraid of you or somebody else. The real courage is, am I going to look within and deal with what I don't like about me? Okay? Am I going to do that? And am I going to heal that? And am I going to love that? Am I going to heal that so that I can love me more? Because the more I can love me, then I really can begin to love my family and allow them to be who they are, not who I think they should be. Because to me, we live too much in the world like that. What something should be. Well, baby, that's not what it is, though. Are you looking at what I'm looking at? Because what you're talking about and what I'm looking at, that's two different things, So, and it's great to have different perspectives. I'm all for what perspective, what lens are you looking at that through? I have a coach, I have a speaking coach, and she's like, take one incident and look at it from 3 or 4 different perspectives, the same incident. So for instance, I can take the cross burning in my yard and I can look at it through a lens of anger, and I can look at it through a lens of empathy, and I can look at it through another end. You see what I'm saying? But each one, it's a different story that I could write. So, and the Memphis 13 story is no different from what perspective am I looking at this from? What do I want to do with this story? And I think this story has the capacity to help us continue to heal, especially in 2021, when the schools are as desegregated now as they were in 1961, which was about the law. Okay, so we changed the law, which is why I'm saying in 2021, our job is to create spaces and give people the tools where we can begin to change our hearts and have the conversation. Now let's change our hearts and then then watch the film and then have the conversation. How about that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I love just that phrasing. We've changed the law. Now we need to change the heart, change our heart. And I think that's a very important distinction. I'm curious on your end, there's got to be many of these, hopefully, but of individuals, of moments, as you're one of the Memphis 13, were there people who helped you, who embraced you, who had empathy, who said, hey, I'm on your side, like I'm your friend, your champion? And you don't have to name names, but I mean, give us a moment that puts a smile on your face when you think back and those who became the champions.
Third grade teacher, Mrs. Mary Evans. She had all three of us, because remember, not only did I go to Bruce, my brother and my sister went to Bruce, which became my little posse. And just them being in the school, even though we weren't in the same classes or anything, just them being there, helped settle me a little bit more, But Mrs. Evans had all three of us. And she was that teacher. And she wasn't one of the youngest teachers, because for the most part, it was almost like the younger the teacher was, the less prejudiced she was, okay? But Miss Evans wasn't one of the young, and she wasn't old, but she was like in the middle somewhere, I would think that she probably was like in her 40s or so, because you think, oh my God, 40s when you're 6 and 7, like that is so old until you get there. But anyway, it was Miss Evans. And just the way she would deal with us, and she had Dwayne first. So she had my brother first, then she had me, and then she had Rashina. And she was just that kind teacher who would listen to what it was that you were saying, and would listen but could understand the subtext. Because, as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, your ability to express yourself is somewhat limited in terms of words. You're feeling everything. So she would take the time with us if we were having an issue, if we were being bullied on, if we were bullied or picked on or whatever. She would always create that space and make sure that we understood how valued we were. That was her gift to me, and not just us. She did it for all of her students, but she was very aware of the experience that the children of color were having, that the African American, the Negro children, as we were called then. She was very aware of that, very sensitive to it, and addressed it head on with a lot of love.
Awesome.
With a lot of love, she addressed it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So we've talked, you've mentioned the documentary. We've mentioned, obviously, the Memphis 13 story. Talk about the foundation and what you're doing now.
The foundation, with the foundation, our mission is to preserve and share the pioneering legacy of the Memphis 13, so that we spark courageous dialogues and diverse connections in our community, which is why I love that word that you use, connection, because that's what it's about, Jeremy. That's, to me, where we're missing the boat. Can you imagine desegregation in 1961 if our hearts had already been in the right place? So how do we do that moving forward? Those are some of the things that we're going to be addressing with the Memphis 13 Foundation. How do we create the spaces? So we can't just say, one of the things, for instance, one of the things that we want to do is we want to create relationships with theaters outside of schools so we can create neutral territories and bring students from, because the Shelby County school system for the most part is Black, and then bring in the children from the white schools in the district or wherever, because I get confused, I don't live in Memphis full time, but create a safe space for them to come. And one of the things that we will be doing is we will be learning some breathing techniques, and we will be learning some tools to give the children before they see the film, okay? And we will have conversations about what leading with the heart looks like. So we have that conversation first. Then we watch the film. And then we have a conversation. So while we're doing that, it's not just about that. So it's not just about me going to a theater, having kids come show the film, and then have a discussion. That other piece, that the beginning, that's everything. Because that's the piece that was missing in 1961, which is why our hearts weren't changed. So they basically set a system up and they set it up to fail. Well, we don't want to fail now because, when you really look at the problem, especially coming out of the pandemic, okay, there's so much healing that needs to be going on that you can't go wrong if what it is that you really are providing and understanding is we all need to heal, and love is what does that. And we need that connection because we've been so disconnected from each other. So now is a time where we can all participate in this, and we can do this through having tools of breath work, gratefulness exercises. When I wake up in the morning, Jeremy, I immediately start thinking about what didn't I get done yesterday? Ooh, I got to do the thing with Jeremy today. Am I ready to do that? Am I going to have time for do this? And heaven forbid the phone should ring and you answer it and it's a problem, that it's a fire and you need to put that out and all of this before 10:30 in the morning. So when we wake up in the morning, right there, when your mind wants to go do that, stop it. Say, and just do a grateful exercise. What am I grateful for? I'm grateful that I woke up and that I'm breathing, and just start there. I'm grateful that I had a bed to lay in last night, because how many people don't? I'm grateful that I have some food to eat. I'm grateful that I'm going to be doing the podcast with Jeremy today and getting this message out. And if we do that, we change the whole energetic flow in our body and around us. And just to know that, and while we're doing that, just take the time to breathe, and to breathe, because breathing resets the autonomic nervous system. The most heinous crimes that have been done in the world has been because of not enough oxygen was getting to the brain. That's just real. That's science, okay? Not enough oxygen. And that's why it's going to be important for the kids. When you want to be mad because you think so-and-so did, I remember when I was at Harlem Children's Zone and kids want to fight, I would just get behind one of them, or I would be in the middle and I would just in one ear, not because I couldn't do both. And I would say, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe, let it go, just breathe. You don't want to hurt and you don't want to be hurt. Because that's what we're doing to each other. Hurt people, and we all out here stressed out about something that don't have nothing to do with what's really going on between me and you. Half the time people are fighting each other. They're fighting each other because they're mad at somebody else or some other experience. But because they feel bad, they're going to make you feel bad, because that's where we get. So how do we learn to start dealing with that energy, so that we can come from a place of, when I'm going to look at a film, I'm going to come from a place of love?
Two-part question.
Okay.
And it's related. First one is, how do you view businesses playing a role in this? So the first one's going to be businesses, and the second one is going to be for all of us as individuals. But I'm just curious, when you talk about the movement, the shift, the seismic shift that's really taking place. And I'm thinking, this falls in line with all the talk around diversity, equity, inclusion. There's so many buzz phrases out there, but how do you view businesses playing a role in opening their hearts to being a catalyst for good?
I think it's crucial. And it's so interesting that you would ask that question, because I was telling you earlier that we did make your event on Friday, but we went to Sherry, Dr. D, and they're all a part of the committee, the Memphis 13 Foundation Committee. We went to Atlanta to the Hope Global Forum, and John Hope Bryant is in, his organization deals with financial literacy and the importance of people understanding what money is, how money is, and all of the things, GDPs and FICA and all of these things that control our lives. And the majority, the average person has no idea what it means. They see it, they hear it, but they don't really know what it means and how it functions in their lives. Well, when I tell you, now they've been having this forum since about 2012, and this is the first time that I went, but we went with Dr. D as her guest, and she's been going since 2012 because she used to live in Atlanta. And so when I tell you what this man has been able to do, and some of the same things that I'm sitting here talking to you about, leading from the heart, is basically what he's been doing with these CEOs of some of the largest banks in this country. Okay. And saying it's not enough to just say, oh, I'm going to give you $10,000, $50,000. What's that? They are now, because of the work that they have done together over years, okay, they are different kinds of leaders. And a lot of the younger leaders, like the gentleman with Robin Hood came out, he was interviewed virtually. But when you listen to them and hear why he put Robin Hood together, what he was trying to make accessible to all people, because it ain't as easy to get into stock. You're not just gonna go buy some stock. If you with a group, you can do that. But as an individual, you got to have a certain amount of money. You got to do that. And you got to pass this and all of this stuff. So it's not really accessible to the Main Street person, shall we say. And so with Robin Hood, and you're listening to this younger man, why he did this, what was going on with his family. Here again, what are we doing? We're listening to his story. That's what, and we all have stories that if we're listening to those stories with an open heart, we're going to respond to them differently than, oh, he was the one that got in trouble and did so and so and so and so on. You can't live life without getting into trouble. You can't live life without doing something that you supposedly weren't supposed to do. So we need to get past that. But definitely, I believe that it's tantamount for businesses, because that's where most people spend most of their time, working for these businesses. So we can't have, I'm telling you, Jeremy, they addressed at the forum, it's not the fact that people don't want to go back to the jobs. It's like, it's not, the word isn't even convenient. It's like, it's not making sense, because by the time I get finished paying all this money for my child to be kept, because a lot of the people that are not returning to the jobs are women who have children and are traveling 2 and 3 hours back and forth to get to a job. Who's keeping my kid? So by the time I get finished paying for transportation, by the time I get finished paying for childcare, ain't no money left for me to do what John Hope likes to say, is too much month left at the end of my check. Too much month left at the end of my check. So that's what's going on. So it's crucial that businesses, but we have to, we have to stop being mad at everything. And we have to go in and talk to people, because if we're talking to people and get them to understand, because you know what, they is as stressed out as everybody else. The CEOs are as stressed out as their executive senior people, as their senior people, as their, why we don't have to be. And that's what causes illness. Because at the end of everything that I do, I'm a certified wellness consultant and I'm a breath coach. So I can have any conversation and it always is going to lead back to, why are we really sick? And it's not the food that is making us the sickest. It exacerbates it. But what's making us sick is stress, fear, hate, all anger, all of the things that vibrate to a low frequency. Those are the things that are making us sick. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. And I think that carries over into the individual question is for us as individuals, how can we be better upstanders? How can we connect better with each other? And I feel like there's not necessarily in this moment in time today, but when you look at the Black Lives Matter and the rift that so many just people felt like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. I don't know, am I saying the wrong things? I feel like as a society, there's a lot of broken glass that people feel like is out there that we could step on possibly. And so it's like, how do we as individuals better connect, better have empathy, better have understanding, open our hearts so that as this new shift takes place, we are in a better place, all of us in a better place, not just a few in a better place. How can all of us be in a better place? And so what's your encouragement, your advice for individuals?
You just said it, individual. It starts with the individual. What's the song that Michael Jackson used to sing? I'm looking at the man in the mirror. It starts there. I'm looking at me, because when I learn to give myself grace, when I learn to be empathetic to myself, when I learn to look at my situation and not judge myself, comparison is the thief of joy. If I'm going to compare myself, I want a podcast. Jeremy got that great podcast. I'm never going to have a podcast like with Jeremy. What does that do? I've locked myself. I've taken value away from myself until we begin to personally, individually understand how valuable we are to the planet. Okay, how valuable we are to our families and to ourselves, to our families, to our communities. It just starts flowing over into all the other areas of life. So by giving ourselves the grace, by having the tools, by waking up in the morning and say, I am not going to go down the rabbit hole of what I am not, of what I didn't get accomplished. I'm going to give praise that I woke up. I'm going to revel in the joy of what I can create in this day. I'm going to take the time to breathe and to be silent and to be patient and to love myself, because I promise you, if you can do it for yourself, then we can start really having more of an effect of the people around us. And because that's what you want to spread. I want to spread that love. I want you to feel good. I'm feeling good. I want you to feel good. And then if you feel good, pay it forward. And then through that lens, let's do the harder work. Because we've all been traumatized, Jeremy. We've all been traumatized. And for us we don't have empathy for each other. We don't. I hear more people talking about people just need to stop being lazy and people need to go and just go on back to these jobs. And that's not what it's about. Because if these jobs are making you sick, why are you going? What are you doing? So we really have to rethink what the new normal is going to be like. And the only way we can do that is for us to begin to understand. I can ask most people, what makes you happy? It's always shopping. So I always have to say, aside from material things, what makes you happy? And most of them don't know. They don't know. Besides material things and eating, okay, take those off the table. What makes you happy? Is it just being with people and laughing? Laughter heals. Seriously, when we are laughing, we're releasing the healthy hormones. We're releasing the endorphins and dopamines and serotonins and oxytocin. They heal the body. And that's all we are. What is the environment of the body that our cells, of which we are made up of, what is it living in? If you wouldn't have your goldfish in no murky, nasty black water thinking they're going to live, why would we think any difference of the cells and the muscles and the tissues that are living? So what am I doing? If I'm walking around stressed all day, I'm releasing all the toxic hormones that create illness. It ain't the food that created the illness. It's how I respond to what is happening. So we have got to individually do the work on ourselves to want to be happy, to choose to be happy in a moment that maybe you shouldn't be. And it's simple things. It's like when my daughter, and I know she hates when I do it, but nobody can push my buttons like my daughter. It's like she knows right where to go. I can be all like this and my daughter will do something. I'll be like, she gets I'm all off. And I've learned I'm so much better now than I was like even a year or 2 years ago. But what I would do is if she put something in there and I couldn't let it go, I will go to YouTube. I will pull up Dave Chappelle or Cat Williams or Kevin Hart, and I'll start doing just what you're doing right now, because people don't even understand the power of the smile. When you smile, you release 300 muscles in your face. And when you do that, it releases chemicals in the body that are the healing, happy, and so just knowing, and I used to tell my students that all the time, I had the opportunity to work with the Healthy Harlem Initiative in New York at one of Jeffrey Canada's schools, at his largest charter school. And I was there for almost 4 years. And it was better than getting a master's or a PhD, because I'm that learner that has to be doing it. I can't read about it and study and write papers about it. I'll read the paper and then I'll be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm that doer. What's the action? And here again, that came from being in the family that I was in. We were just doing. But I would tell the kids, when you feel that way, when your parent has made you so upset that you just want to go in your room and knock everything over, I said, go to your computer, pull up the funniest thing that even if you've seen it, and rewatch it. And when you sit there, because also, Jeremy, when we do that, we're breathing deep. So we're resetting that autonomic nervous system again, and we're letting the oxygen go to the brain and letting everything calm down, and we're not being controlled by the emotion of being mad or whatever.
You have such an aura. I love it. This is one of those conversations we could have for like hours and hours and hours, but let's switch over. Let's do a lightning round. So okay. Short questions, short answers.
Okay.
Outside of watching comedy and breathing exercises, what do you like to do to relax?
I like to swing and I like to swim.
Nice.
I love the water. I feel like, what the body can do in the water, it can do so much more in the water than it can do on land.
So what's a favorite TV show or movie that you enjoy watching? It could be a TV series. What do you enjoy watching?
What do I enjoy watching? Well, one of my favorite, and I don't know why, and just because you asked me that, one of my favorite movies to watch, and I don't know why, has always been the football movie that Al Pacino was in and Jamie Foxx was in, Any Given Sunday. It's one of my, I don't know why, it's just one of my favorite movies. I will watch that movie if it's, like if I'm flicking through TV, I'll watch that movie. And I used to own the DVD, and I would just really watch that. And black and white. I love, I can't even remember Rosebud, the one, which one, the black and white one. You know what I'm talking about. I love that movie. Yeah.
So where do you like to go for vacation? What's a favorite vacation spot?
Anywhere where it's warm with a beach, because I like to swim in the ocean. It can be Jamaica, it can be the Bahamas, it can be any island, it can be Florida. I just want to be around sand, beach, salt water, because salt water is so healing as well.
When you're in Memphis, what are some of your favorite go-to spots?
I tell everybody when I come to Memphis, because Memphis is big on food, there are about 4 or 5 restaurants that are a must. So if I'm only going to be here a week, I know every night where I'm going to eat. If I'm going to be here longer, then I know once a week where I'm going to eat. That's going to be Bosco's, because they have a salmon Caesar salad that is to die for. That's going to be Gus's fried chicken. I'm going to have to do Gus's fried chicken while I'm here, because they can fried chicken. The crispiness on that chicken is special. It's going to be Rendezvous, because I'm going to want to go get some barbecue, and that, it just kind of falls off the bone. So I have my places. It's going to be, I like the margaritas at, I can't even think of the name of the restaurant right now. And I've hit all those places already. So.
Where outside of the Memphis area, give us a favorite like restaurant or just a few favorite places to go.
Outside of Memphis? You mean
outside of Memphis? Yeah, anywhere.
Like
so New York,
where I live?
Wherever you want.
Oh, well, shoot, it would be New York, and it would be Boulevard, because they have some of the best pancakes in the world. Where else would oh, there's a new little restaurant that was my restaurant for the summer that opened up called Bixie's. And I'm telling you, Jeremy, they would make this spicy margarita, and that was my summer drink, and they would they had some jalapeno in there, but they also had these little peppers. And if you take the seeds out the jalapeno, it's not going to burn you. But there's something about jalapeno being in the mixture that makes it just have this clean taste to it. And I couldn't find anybody to make me a spicy margarita in Memphis. I was a little disappointed, but we're going to work on that.
This is how I put together my list of places to go and visit and eat. What's a favorite, you don't have to get it like exactly right, but a favorite quote or saying that inspires you?
I just read a quote yesterday that I absolutely love. And it's real simple. And I'm gonna pull it up real fast because I think I want to say it. It's quick, it's simple, and of course, it's not coming up right now. But wait a minute, all I have to do is put O's name in here.
Yeah, you have time.
OMA. Okay, I just sent it to an artist that I work with. All it says is patience allows life to fall into place. Patience, because that's what I'm experiencing more than anything right now. Everybody wants everything and they want it right now. And they want it right now, especially the non-baby boomers, okay? Because I'm a baby boomer. Okay, our time, I'm not gonna say our time has passed. We're just in a different phase, But when I look at the younger people, they just gotta have everything. And patience doesn't mean that you gotta wait for 5 or 10 years, but patience means do what you do, trust it, trust in the energetic creator, trust it, do your best. Do it, and then do whatever else needs to be done. But as you're doing it, we got to live like it already is the results that we want. It's so interesting to talk to people, and you talk to people and you say, what's going on? And they'll tell you all the messed up stuff. And they just get stuck in that. And it's just like, it makes you not want to talk to them, number one. But the other thing is, well, tell me what you want the results to be. What are the results that you would like to see? Is it good? Is it happy? How do you see that? Because if we don't understand, until we stay focused on the world we want to live in and how beautiful the world can be, if we don't begin to vibrate to that before it is that, we will never create it. Because we create, and if everybody is walking around always talking about what ain't gonna happen, guess what happens? It ain't gonna happen. But if we were to reverse that, then it will happen. So
I feel like that needs an amen. That's good. I like that. That's awesome. So you obviously are creating your legacy every single day, and you've done just an amazing, when you look at everything you're doing with the foundation and your storyline and using it with love, amazing legacy that you're creating each and every day. But many, many years from now, what do you hope your legacy is? Not just tied to the Memphis 13 story, but obviously much larger in the context of the world and change. What do you hope your legacy is?
That I help people to connect with themselves and learn how to love, and how important it is to love yourself, because that's where it starts from. Because if we're all, whether we believe it or not, whether we want it to be or not, Jeremy, we are all interconnected. We are energetically. We are the energy that makes up everything. And it is all of us, and in my mind, it is all of us together being that energy that creates the God that we, serve and speak of. That's what it is. But it is this energy, and it doesn't make any difference if it's good or if it's bad or whatever it is. We're still connected. There's no disconnection from it, no matter what you want to think. You want to think because you're a different color than me that but we still connected. So if we were focused on learning to love ourselves, automatically, without us even thinking about it, that connection would be oscillating to a different frequency, which would be a high frequency that would allow us to begin to live and be all that, so much more that we're capable of being, because we're not living up to our full potential at this point. I know you know that, but anyway, that's what I think.
So I wish right now, if we were a person, I'd give you a big hug, but you get the virtual hug on this instead, being through Zoom. But so wrap up with contact information, website. When you talk about your efforts with the Memphis 13 Foundation, talk about the website there. Where else can we follow you and your efforts? So where do we go to learn more and follow your efforts?
So we know about the Memphis 13 Foundation. That's a Facebook, and give us grace because we may not have posted as much stuff yet. Sherry and I were having that conversation. It's just been a whirlwind. We've been doing so much in the last 21 days. So that's Facebook, the Memphis 13, and then the Memphis13.com is where you can go see the documentary, and there's a curriculum for teachers who want to teach it in school. Me personally, that would be Dwania Kyles, Living with Grace, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Dwania Kyles, and on Instagram, Kyles Dwania. So it's all about Dwania Kyles, because I'm just trying to keep it simple, that you don't have to think too many different things.
Hey,
but
you have
I
to
am
make it
serious.
simple.
I'm gonna grow up and be grown like you, Jeremy, and give me a podcast. Because you see, I run my mouth so much. It's just like, oh my God.
Hey, I would listen. You have an amazing energy, and you're an amazing storyteller. And like I said, I love the fact that you're taking your story, and for many, like you said, that can be darkness, but you're turning it into light. You're turning it into love. You're using it as an opportunity for all of us to grow. And I love the aura, the energy, the stories, the angle, the mindset. I love you and everything you're doing. So you are a change maker. Thank you very much for being on the ChangeMakers podcast. Greatly appreciate you and all your efforts.
Thank you so much for providing this space for me to come and voice my ideas. Thank you so much. It was fun, and it's fun, because I tell people, if it ain't fun, I'm not doing it.
Well, you are a change maker. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate you. And definitely everyone, encourage you, make sure and follow Dwania Kyles, follow the Memphis 13 Foundation and all their efforts. Big things are ahead. So thank you for tuning into the ChangeMakers podcast. We'll see you back on future episodes.